Welcome to another episode of Untrapped. Today's guest is a master at helping leaders and organizations clear out what she calls head trash, those emotional barriers that keep us from truly succeeding. Tish Squillaro isn't just another consultant. She's a self-made entrepreneur who funded her own education, starting in high school, and built her first business right out of college, a doggy daycare she ran for 13 years before pivoting into leadership strategy. Her journey is super fascinating. She founded Candor Consulting in 2007, and since then, she's become something of a secret weapon for companies like AT&T, Salesforce, and IBM. Her groundbreaking work isn't just about traditional consulting. It's about understanding that emotional intelligence is what makes or breaks leadership. She's even written a book series called Head Trash that breaks down the 7 emotional patterns that can derail even the most talented professionals. Things like fear, arrogance, and insecurity that we all struggle with but rarely talk about. The real kicker, Tish doesn't just diagnose problems. She becomes an extension of the team, helping these organizations navigate complex leadership transitions with a level of insight that's very rare in today's consulting world. Smart CEOs, Bravo Award winner, executive coach, and someone who truly understands that success is as much about emotional awareness as it is about strategy. Please welcome Tish Squillaro to the show. All right. Tish Squillaro, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great, Rory. How are you today?
Very well. I appreciate you coming on. Obviously, there will be an introduction for people in the episode, so they'll know a little bit about you, but I would love to hear from you just in a few sentences, who you are, what you do, and how you would describe it to somebody if they met you on the street.
My name is Tish Squillaro. I am a coach. I am a business advisor, and I'm someone who likes to solve problems. So my client base will say I'm a little bit of a tough cookie because we're going to talk about stuff that may not want to always address and cover. I stick with my clients. So I would like to say I'm a partner. I'm a team player and a partner to them. And I love what I do. I've been doing it a long time, over 25 years. I have met many wonderful people and we have solved many problems together.
That's fantastic. So I do have to ask you, I'm super curious about this. You paid your own way through high school? Is that correct?
I chose a high school that my parents weren't necessarily thinking about sending me to because it was a private Catholic school and there were public schools close by, but I wanted to go to this particular school. So I took a job on weekends and I worked in a flea market selling lingerie from Friday to Sunday. And the funny thing is I was next to a pickle stand. Back then, pickles were in barrels and fermented with these different herbs. And I'd come home smelling like a pickle almost Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And it was a great learning experience. I lost a lot of fun times, I think, because by the time I got home, it was after 10. But we made a lot of friends. I say we because there was like a shift that everyone had. You got to meet people in this flea market environment, a little bit like Reading Terminal today, or think of that sort of large space that has a lot of different diversity of things to eat or buy. And yeah, so that's how I paid the partial tuition to go to this school.
I think you're the first person I've ever met that has paid for their own high school or anything under college. And then you continue to do that into college.
I love, but they had not a lot of means. And when I made choices and it was about money, they always said, you can always do it yourself. And so I went to work for about a year or two from high school to college so that I could start the savings and figure out where I wanted to go. Because when you're making your choice, you really better figure out where you want to go. So I did learn a lot about when I bought school books, I read them. I used them and I didn't write in them so I could bring them back and get the money. So there's just little things you learn. But yes, I put myself through college completely. I did.
I love that. And I'm super curious because I think a lot of people, especially the generation now, I mean, a job where they're having to, not specifically sell lingerie, but actually sell to people, talk to people face to face, present an argument, build value, do these things. I would think it's always been kind of a rare skill. Was that something you were naturally good at, or did you just take the job and say, I'm going to figure out how to do this well?
Yeah, I don't think I was ever an introvert. When I was really young, I remember one neighbor told my mom, she should be an attorney. She can argue anything. So I do think I had an opinion. So when it came to selling, I didn't have a hard time, especially if I liked what I was selling. And I do think that's a novel thing to keep in mind. Whatever you pick to do in your life or career, make sure you like it because it will matter. I liked selling lingerie. And so I met a lot of great people and I had a lot of great lingerie at that point too.
That's a nice perk, right? I love that. Loving what you sell. That's a great point. I think it gets much easier when the thing that you're really promoting and putting in front of people is something that you're excited about and believe in. So you go to school, and then right after that, you started another business. So I'd love to hear that story. How did you? I guess first I would love to know, how did you decide to start a business? Why not get a job somewhere or go join somebody else's team or do something else? And then how did you decide to start the type of business you did? What was the story there?
Like all things that I don't have a plan. It just happened. So I'm not recommending that for others. You have to really be comfortable with uncertainty and gambling and taking risks. But when I was in college, I had a beagle named Barney, and I got to see him all the time because he was everything to me. I lived alone. He was my best friend. When I realized I was coming to graduation and I had to get a job, I'm like, where does Barney go? And other friends had dog walkers and scary stories about dog walkers where they filmed them not really walking the dog and spending 5 minutes and all this stuff. And I was like, maybe we need a place for dogs. And so we would go to this dog park and I introduced myself to another New Yorker. So we were two people from New York and we talked about it. And we just said, hey, why don't we open up a dog daycare? It was literally how it happened. We left that park, went looking for real estate, found a location. I don't think we thought long enough about what we were going to do because we probably would have talked ourselves out of it. But we did open up the first dog daycare in Boarding in 1997. And today you find dog daycares everywhere. So I will take the credit with my co-partner charity that we took that risk of helping, the world see that dogs can actually play together. They're not going to bite each other. And we had to go in front of the city of Philadelphia to argue for a variance that we can have dogs not in cages all day. So it was a real big production that many stages we probably have to question, why did we do this? We had to do our own landscaping and fix up the place. To one point we were laying carpeting down and I glued my fingers together because I would have to bike ride back and forth to where we lived. And I didn't realize I'd be sweating the glue into my fingers. We had to cut the gloves off. I have tons of great stories. And you know what? It carves out yourself. So I think today, I'm much older than I was when we opened the business. And how I raise my two kids is I tell them everything's possible if you put hard work in. And you got to try something or you won't know. So don't close every door before you stepped in and took a peek. And so that was really why we opened the dog business. Loved doing it. I do think we made a lot of people happy, including dogs. But over time, I realized picking up Poopy and playing with dogs, though they probably wasn't going to be where I wanted to go. And I like getting all dressed and I would be yelled at, why are you all dressed? You're going to be in the yard all day. I was like, I know, but I got to go to work and feel done. So I did decide from there to go into more corporate America. And, that had its own challenges because I would show my resume and you'd see I went to a decent college. And then before you know it, Doggy World Daycare is her first job. So everyone said, what happened to you? Why didn't you follow a corporate job? And back then, I don't think entrepreneurship was a title people were comfortable with. So I looked odd to people. But someone gave me an opportunity as a recruiter, which gave me the insights to my people dynamic skills. And from there, I started Candor. Just one or two jobs where I realized, okay, I don't like working for someone. I think I want to work for myself. And I decided to do a consulting business. Now, of course, it's evolved in 25 years, but that's why we started it. And that's why I started that business, was because I had to figure out what to do to pay my student loans.
Right. I think it's such a good lesson because I would imagine there are probably every day there are a million great ideas that people have for something they should do. But instead of doing what you guys did and just sort of taking the ball and running with it, people immediately jump into, or this would be hard, or here's the reasons I can't. And then it just kind of dies on the vine.
And it does. So, and maybe some should be vetted out. So I'm not going to be reckless and do everything. But when I wrote my 2 books, if I would have known how labor intensive and how involving book writing and publishing is going to be, and really, I'm not a bestseller and I'm not famous. So it's a great little business card, if you will, because it gets me into doors, but it's not selling for me. I probably would have said, don't do it. Right. But yet I wrote 2. So I do think sometimes not overanalyzing and self-doubt not making those things get in your way, do have great things come. Because usually anyone who's doing something new and different, you never know how it's going to impact like dogs have a different world, right? And my books hopefully impact people. So at the end of the day, I want you to be cautious, but I don't want you to stop. And that's part of the book Head Trash. Fear is in everyone. Fear is healthy so that you don't do things, negligently or recklessly. But when you don't move and you stay still, then you watch people pass you by and then you have regret. So it's just that balance.
Yeah. And I would love to hear more about the transition you made, exactly for the reasons you said. It seemed to me, I would have expected exactly what you told me, that you go from running a doggy daycare to getting into leadership development, executive coaching, however you want to term it. But you're trying to get into offices of CEOs and COOs and these executive teams. And that is kind of there's a little bit of a pedigree aspect to that of like, does anybody know you? Do we have you on a referral? Like, how did you overcome that and get into these rooms and have these conversations with people to build your business from the start?
Wasn't easy. And I say that in the kindest way. It was a lot of grunt work. It was a lot of hitting the pavement. And pre-COVID, everything was flying or driving or walking somewhere. There was no virtual relationship building. And I took a lot of jobs that obviously my pay scales changes over experience, but I would take on a lot of things in the whole umbrella of people dynamics that today I don't. Like I would be a fractional HR person at times for different elements of the HR compliance side. I did recruiting where I would help people find people. I don't do those things anymore. So I did start to grow into myself. But what I learned was I didn't know what people needed until I tried. So what I did is I worked a couple of years doing a little bit of everything and then started to see what I gravitated towards successfully and what my customer base found valuable. And then that's how I started to tweak down and really focus on thinking of Candor and Tish, here's what you get. But in the beginning, I got rejected. I was not someone people knew. I was also younger back then, so I didn't have a lot of years behind me. And when you looked at what I was doing prior, Doggy World Daycare was not a big win for me when I had to talk about it. The only thing it helped with is working with an entrepreneur who understood I knew the grit and the uncertainty and the fear and the no pay scale and you work for free, all that environment. I knew what that was like. We had it for 7 to 8 years, so I knew what that was like. And so I at least appealed of some sort of bond with people who are young entrepreneurs or investors or who are founders because I was one. So I get it.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And there's a massive lesson in there for anybody who's listening, especially if they're thinking about starting something, that those first few years, there really may be no mapping them out. There's not a plan for, like you said, if you would have sat in a room and tried to map out what's the best offer for me to sell to my client and who are they, it was an unanswerable question. Like you had to take action. You had to do something. You had to get out there and meet people and make offers and get rejected and do these things before you started to kind of codify this over time. And
myself. So I started out trying to figure out how could I brand myself. And I had coffee with Tish or Tuesdays with Tish, I think it was. And I found a diner that was in a very popular business area. And I would sit there in the diner and I would let the front desk know, like when they come in, that I was taking people to have a cup of coffee with me. I'll never forget this. And I started to get people, like I would network that I was doing this. And people would come in and ask me business questions. They sit down, no cost. And I would have an hour session from 8 to 9, or was it 7:30 to 8:30, something like that, where it was Tuesdays with Tish. And I'd sit in the diner and they had the same booth for me. And I got friendly with the diner people and they would field people over. And that's how I started to build a name for myself. But I probably did that for a good year. And there were days I sat there by myself. Like you get very humble when you're in the stage of selling. So the best advice I could give to anyone who's going to be opening their business, you are a salesperson. And if you believe you're not, you better learn how to be one, because you're going to have to get out there and sell yourself. You're going to have to hear and get rejected. You're going to have to pick yourself up when things don't go well. Those are all the elements that I think of when I think of a salesperson, quite honestly, because you got to really put yourself out there. And there are some people who think themselves not salespeople. And I say, listen, first failure moment, you are a salesperson, because what you're building is a relationship with someone to trust you. That's selling. So you need to get comfortable with that, no matter what your business is, to raise capital, to be in a services business, to have a product, no matter what you're going to do, coaching in particular, all you have is your stuff. Like I always joke, I sell air, and either you want to breathe it or not. But that air has a lot of stuff inside that you're going to be able to utilize if you're willing. But I don't sell anything that concrete. Now, today I've created programs and offsites, and I have tools I could give people, and I now have some books. But when I started out, no different than I am today, I'm selling advice.
Now, I would love to know how you ended up there, because it would seem like you've come out of this business, you're launching into consulting. It would be very easy to make it kind of a strategic focus and try to find some way to help companies optimize. But you landed on the emotional aspect of it, which in transparency, I think is the whole game as an entrepreneur and as a CEO, because it's completely different when I wake up and I know that my paycheck's coming from so-and-so and it's going to come no matter what. And I have my PTO and all that, versus me waking up and knowing that my business could fail today if I don't do the right things, or if it's possible. And I have everything riding on me. That's a totally different mind game than working in a job. And so how did you land on that as kind of the focus of your consulting, of the emotional side of things?
Meaning how I incorporate emotions into what I do, or how I held my emotions to manage the uncertainty of, am I getting paid this?
How did you land on, well, I'd love to hear that one as well, but how did you land on that as kind of the main offer? You mentioned kind of doing recruiting and some of these other things, but now at some point, you obviously sort of lasered in on, I'm going to help people specifically navigate these 7 emotional blocks. How did that happen? Was that kind of an aha moment, or was it a slow transition?
Good question, Rory. I do think it came out of where I saw the challenges that people have. If it's a skill, you can learn that. So that's not really a challenge. It's a growth moment, and you go figure out how to do it, right? But if you have to manage yourself through something, if you have to give yourself confidence to go do that thing, those are behaviors. And, I happen to love behaviors because I believe that they are the spice of who we are as individuals. But I also believe that they're flexible, but we don't treat them as flexible. So I'm a very dominant driving person. Can't help it. You probably have guessed that already. But I could be demure and lay back if I'm with an environment where there's other people that need that role and I'm just going to fit in. I've learned to navigate that. So for me, I think it was I learned about myself that way. And then I realized, well, if I'm like that, and I realize I have to be able to adjust to fit the moment, read my audience, and then figure out what to do, I bet I could help other people do the same thing. So that's how it went from, I never really did a lot of recruiting. I found it easy to actually find the right people for people, but that's because I used behavioral science and fit what was needed for that role, not the criteria of that person. And so that always helped me, but I didn't love that side of the job. I loved the development of people because I could see the light bulb go up when someone hit on something. I can watch someone call me and say, I did it. I had that tough conversation. So to me, those are the things I feel good about. And so that's why I always focused in that area. I do it both individually, but I've also focused a lot more on teams, like building teams to work well together, to communicate with effectiveness, to hold each other accountable. I find that when we get into the team environment, you have to learn how to sacrifice. You have to learn how to support. It's not all about you anymore. And you really need to wear a whole other mindset in a team environment. So I take a lot of my individual coaching development and focus on teams in that same way as one team, because we have to act as one team.
Yeah. And I think that's so valuable because, it's one thing if you're a leader or even a part of a team and you have that one team member that's just not delivering or struggles to get their stuff done or whatever, insert problem here. It could be anything. It's a totally different conversation when you're like, hey, why can't you be on time, versus which of these emotions is causing this behavior from you? What are you experiencing when we give you a new task that's causing you to show up not your best? Because then you start really making some headway, right? It's like, wow, I feel a ton of anxiety, or
it's the root cause, right? How do you solve a problem if you don't know where it's coming from? So I like to say a behavior is usually right in the center of where it's all starting from. And the book, Head Trash, was built on 7 behaviors or emotions. I call those emotions more than behaviors, but they're emotions that control us at times. But when they're not controlling us and we're using them, that's the human side, like fear and insecurity and guilt and control. These are all things that we live every day. But when that control forces me to not hire people who I think are smarter than me, oh my goodness, I'm stifling all of the growth of the company. Or when I can't delegate and get other people to do stuff that I know I could do faster, but I should teach them, but I don't do it, that's stunting the business's growth as well as not empowering. So it always tied back to a business challenge. And again, I am a business coach, right? So I'd like to say I help people, but when a company hires me, I am there to help the business. All roads lead to what's not making the business successful. And typically people drive businesses. So it's something people are doing. And that's how I break it down. And the 7 emotions or people's behaviors are always right there. And that's center nucleus. And once you know what it is, and it'll be different for all of us. That's what's so unique about the coaching then, is because you may have one thing and I may have, we all can't act the same way. Then you can repair that by helping people figure out how to manage it. See, if I can manage my emotions, then great. Like my number one emotion out of the head trash is anger. And I don't look like an angry person unless you piss me off. But I realize that I don't like no. No matter who's telling me no. I don't like not getting what I thought. And so my reactive side could come across angry. Even though I'm just like upset about it, I'm making you feel like I'm upset with you. I had to work on that. I had to work on that for myself. So it's just recognizing the triggers. And I do believe once people believe what we've uncovered is really them, they will be able to work with it. As I have nothing to do with it then. It's really up to each of those people to drive those success moments for themselves. But sometimes we need help figuring out what they are because we have blind spots. We look at ourselves very differently. We listen to other people who don't give us the truth. When those things happen, then your judgment or your vision isn't clear.
Right. I would love to hear how you coach people to kind of find the balance, right? Because as an entrepreneur, I think about fear is a good one. Like if I'm taking a big risk or making a change or doing something, I'm going to feel some fear. And in my opinion, there's a normal level of fear, right? Of just any kind of unknown out there. But then there's, like you're talking about, there's the fear or the anger that holds you back. Or so how do you, I guess, how do you navigate that? How do you know when, hey, this is just a normal response to what I'm experiencing? Anger is a good example. Like if somebody crosses a boundary or does something wrong, you're going to feel angry and probably justified so. But I'm curious how you kind of find the balance between the, taking it too far and using the healthy amount.
And I use it for myself, but I also offer it in my coaching. On anger, I created something called the invisible zipper. Because for someone with anger, they got to zip that mouth shut because whatever's coming out right away is not really what they mean. So I create things, tools, even if they're invisible, to give people recognition of there's the trigger. Mine and anger is usually your mouth, your body language, anything that reacts. How do you do that? And for someone who has to manage anger, what you need to be able to do is take a step back and just cool it. Some people need to walk out. Others need to write it down and then not send something. For me, I need the motion. I go like this because I know, okay, what I'm about to say is not going to work. So let me do this because I know I've done something because people like me who are very driven are action oriented. So to say, just be calm doesn't work for me. I have to do something that calms me, right? So to me, the movement, that's a trigger. I know, okay, shush. On the fear, and I have this too, even though it looks like I recklessly start businesses and just hope they work, I do get cautious around things. I always tell everyone that is contemplating something that is not clear, but sounds appealing, break it down in steps. Because to me, little baby steps throughout the process will help you navigate whether I'm going to get to the finish line or not. When you think of it about all the steps you have, I have to admit, everything's overwhelming. The book writing is a perfect example. I co-authored with someone who was very calm, very consistent, and very structured. I'm the opposite. If it weren't for him, I would have never finished the books because there were many times I was ready to just, I'm not reading it again. What do you mean I have to review that chapter? Like it was like overwhelming. But his consistency said, Tish, we got to read this. We got to go over it one more time. You don't want to publish it with him. So those are the things. So for me, I then started to say, okay, let me break in the steps. We got 12 chapters. We're going to do each chapter. Let's take each chapter one at a time. Before you know it, we were done. So for anyone out there that is looking at a big, audacious, fat goal that they want to do because it's going to change their life if it goes well, and if it doesn't go well, it could be a problem. why not start with little actionable steps and see if you get more confident along that route or even less confident because now there's evidence this isn't for you or this isn't going to work. And those to me seem to have helped people to have that difficult conversation they might have to have. Don't tell me how it's going to react. Why don't you think about why you're saying it, when you're going to say it, in what area do you think you should say it, and what do you want out of that? So when you break things down in steps, you start to create your own little plan. And I do think in that sense, people will at least start. And to me, fear as a head trash, you don't even start. You stay stagnant like a stop sign. I say look at it as a caution sign. The little yellow light's flashing, but you're still going.
Yeah, I love that. So you've obviously come a long way since you started the business so many years ago. What does your day-to-day look like now? I mean, what is your role in the company as part of the bigger picture?
It never changes. You go out, you meet people, you constantly sell what you have to offer. And I wish after 25 years, I can say it's a machine and it feeds itself. We're in a services business, so I don't have a machine. Every day I look at my next quarter. I live quarter by quarter. I used to live month to month. Now I live quarter by quarter because I can have enough client base that I can see the quarter, but I never get too cocky and never think I have enough. So I always look at it quarter to quarter as if I'm going to eat, live, or die in that quarter. And not much has changed. I get up and I make sure I meet new people every day. I ask someone for a lead or a connection that I can meet someone new. I follow up with people that I've worked with in the past. I have a routine of things I've been doing since the day I started. And I just keep doing that. And I have to say it works for me. Most of my business comes from referrals. I now moved from living in Philadelphia for over 30 years. I now live in Miami. So I'm starting all over again from a business community at my fingertips. I don't have one. And so just in the last 3 days, I have met a whole different set of people to try to better understand how they learn about me and understand what I do and how maybe I can insert myself in what they're doing. And so I even said this to my husband when I came home from lunch. I'm not used to being out dressed. I'm usually able to sit home and do my work. But it's refreshing to get out and to talk about things with new people. And that opens up different innovations and ideas. And so I got a couple of new ideas I have now that I think I'm going to try doing over the next 6 months. That is relative to what I do, but to a very particular audience that I believe could use coaching and guidance because it's a very vulnerable time. And I think I'm going to start to position a program in line just for that audience, which is new to what I'm doing today.
I love that. And it segues perfectly because I was going to ask you, based on all these conversations you have with people and just constantly networking, what are some of the trends or changes that you're seeing in your industry or the market landscape as a greater whole that you're sort of paying attention to over the next year?
There are 3 things I would say I'm watching. One is the value add of AI and how it's impacting my field, coaching. Just to be cautious on it, I believe that it's extremely valuable because it's a lot of information very quickly. But I don't know if the information has the layer of human interaction and emotion. So as long as we're using AI to better understand how to do something or gather information, let's put the human element from the human back into it. Because I do think that's one thing that is in jeopardy. That's one. The second is I don't see a lot of great role models for our young, new leaders that are coming out. There's so much. I'm sure there's great leaders out there, but there is so much information. Anybody can get on a TikTok and tell you, I know how to do this, and they do. And so I do think that the value of how experience drives good guidance is lost a little bit, because if you look good and you can get on social, you'll be heard. But I don't know if you know a lot of stuff. So I do think that's another area, and I call that the value chain of that. And the other is I do think grit and putting in the muscle. And I'm a culprit because I've got 2 kids in their 20s, so I'm sure I gave them a better life than I had starting at 14 in the pickle-infested flea market. But they don't have as much resilience. And I say they, I think our young youth who are so smart and so multitask that they can do a lot of things that I cannot do. Like my kids shock me on how they do stuff. But part of the evolution is I hope that they recognize that what is not what it is, truly. It isn't what it seems. There's always 7,000 businesses that didn't make it for the one that did. There is always the hard roads they don't talk about. They just talk about the big win. So I want people to become more familiar that it's hard. Life is hard. Relationships are hard. You need to work at them. Everyone's got a sacrifice. I don't see that. I see people making quick decisions instinctually or reacting to one thing and blowing it up to be the end of. And I fear that we're not making good choices. So those are my 3 that I'm watching. And I believe the thing I'm going to try to launch out there for a particular audience is a little bit around those things.
I will say on that last one, the way that I've conceptualized it to myself is the difference between low resolution and high resolution thinking is that there's the low resolution, which is a lot of the polarity we see of that everything is very much in a box of some kind. You're either this or that, or this or that, and this is good and that's bad, and that's kind of how the world is. It's it. And then high resolution is the nuance. It's like, well, sometimes I'm this, but sometimes I'm this, and it depends on the situation. And I think there's an appetite for that, but I do think you don't hear about it online. You don't really see it anywhere. And so I think you would find
I hope we get it. I really do. And it's not something I'm going to do, but I feel like I am a starter of things. I'm not good at the sustaining and staying, but I'm good at the beginning, like the dog business, and someone grew it, now they're everywhere, right? So to me, I believe that if I have a good idea that I don't mind putting the muscle in to start it, I don't have to be the person that drives it all the way. But maybe I'm the person that ventures out to start it. And I do think there is a piece missing in our evolution, and maybe it's just a refinement that I would like to focus on for a bit in my next chapter.
I love that. And then the other one you mentioned was AI. And so I'm curious, how have you seen that impact your business or your industry over the last 6 or 12 months?
Look, there's the good and the bad of new. So I do believe that I use it. So when we're putting a program together and I say, hey, I want to ask a question that looks like this, can you give me a good exercise for my programs? Or I would want to get some information for stats that I want to really hone in on something in particular with a team. Love it. Makes my life, it goes right to what I need. But I know already the boundaries of what I'm looking for. I have watched it become a tool for people who didn't know any better. And I'll give you an example. Someone I'm coaching is dealing with how they deliver messages to a specific audience. They use ChatGPT. ChatGPT said she was doing a fine job, but she's not doing a fine job because ChatGPT didn't talk about tone, body language, eye rolling, and the message delivery. It talked about the words. These are the words you could use. So I do think she got bad news, bad guidance, and just taking it for face value. There needed to be more to it. So I said, why don't you show me what you sent to ChatGPT? Let's work it through. And I said, when you said this with your words and you didn't put it in email, what was your tone? And what was your body language? Did you look at everybody when you said it? Did you look compassionate about it? Or did you just read it like it was a script? So I do think we have to figure out how to incorporate AI so that we don't lose sight of people still need to know how to do the things AI is going to be doing for us or with us, because what happens when it goes down and there's no technology for a moment? Will we not know what to do? I think the way we're going, I'll know what to do. If I didn't have to, I could have wrote my own questions. But if someone only used and relied on that 5 years from now, when they have never learned how to do it, and all of a sudden electricity goes out or we don't have our Wi-Fi today, and they just say, just go build it from scratch, the old-fashioned way. I don't think someone's going to know what to do.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I think we refer to that as human in the loop. I mean, when we're installing these AI agents or automations for companies and helping them streamline some of their processes, we always want a human to have their finger on the pulse somewhere. Even if the whole thing is automated, the email goes to that human and gets proofread before it goes out. I've just seen, even in my personal life, I've seen ChatGPT give me crazy answers, stuff that I just know is wrong, that I'm like, I'm not going to put my entire business in the hands of this system yet. But people are, like you said, here's my research paper. It's totally done. It's like, this is
I have heard in academia, like kids are not working on their homework. They're making AI do it, and the teachers are actually grading it through AI. I'm like, oh, that's a great way to spend my money.
Yeah, no kidding. So I'm curious, what would you say is one thing right now that is going really well at Candor or for you? And then what's something that's on your radar that is frustrating you or is a challenge that you're working to solve?
So something going well. I do believe when I work with someone on them and we highlight their behaviors, I see immediate light bulbs and I know they're going to change something or at least adjust.
Yeah.
So I love that. And it has not changed in 25 years. I use a profile called DIF. I will never not use that with anyone. My kids have had it done. I believe that knowledge on an individual changes everything. So that's always been working. What I see is not working. Well, I do think people are losing sight of investing in people. Once again, there was a time when people weren't investing and then they started investing and now, once again, this push of AI and this economy challenges and everything else going on, that the one area that gets cut is anything helping people grow, develop, understand what they're supposed to do. That's where the nickels and dimes are coming from. And I think that's a mistake. And it's frustrating for me because I'm in companies where we're having tons of progress and they don't even have a reason why they have to stop working other than I was the thing that was cut. That frustrates me a lot. It does.
Yeah, and that's it. It is very short-sighted, right? Because what happens is, let's say we go into an economic period for a few years where things are tough and they're cutting these programs. Well, when things come back, now all you have is people who haven't been training or nurturing or developing themselves for the last few years, and they're not ready to handle a business doubling year over year or any of that. They just don't have that capacity, right? So, yeah, I can understand where that's
And I
frustrating.
haven't, that's what
So,
it is, the part of the business.
so for you as CEO, what metrics do you use to judge your business? I mean, is it like beyond revenue? I mean, is it just revenue? Do you look at client count? Like, how do you judge quarter to quarter, like you were mentioning, hey, we're on track or we're off track?
I created a fictitious metrics for myself. I like to have a certain amount of client base or a certain amount of projects on individuals and teams just to balance. So to me, as long as I'm fulfilling that, I feel like I'm on course. I always think I could fit in someone, so I never say no. And when I have a light month, I panic. I still do. After all these years, I go back out and hustle and start talking. And so it's that machine that I tell anyone who's out there, it never ends because you're as good as the last person you talk to. You better go talk to someone else because the selling part is constant. It's constant. And I don't
No.
love it as much as I do the working. Like, I wish there was a funnel that just fed me stuff because I would be busy and work forever, 24 hours. But it's the marketing and the selling part that it's a mind game. And that's the hardest part. But to me, if I'm doing a certain number of clients and I have a variety where it's individuals and teams, I feel like I'm doing a good job of maintaining momentum.
Yeah, I can relate to the fear you mentioned. The number of times I've had a client call me and have to cancel or change their plan, and my brain's first reaction is like, "This is the end of my business. Like this is tomorrow. All the other clients are going to call. I'm going to lose every." It's like how quickly my brain
I never
jumps
thought
into that
about
fear
that,
mode.
Rory. But you know what? I used to joke with my husband that every new year I go, I don't know how I'm going to do this year, hon. I could have 0 clients. He goes, Tish, this is like the 20th year you're in business. Every October, you tell me, I'm almost going to tape you the same thing. And then every year you do better than last year. I know, but I don't know that. You just
Right.
don't know. So I
It's
go
not
into it as,
guaranteed.
I hate 2 times of year. I hate April timeframe because if I haven't built business by April, I have a shitty sum or a bad sum or light sum.
Right.
And if I haven't closed business in October for the first quarter, I'm going to have a real light quarter. So April and October is when I get the panic voice that my husband always sends me flowers because I know it's that month. We're going to get through it. Now, having worked so long and my lifestyle's in a different place, I'm not eating what I kill as much as I had before, but I still treat it that way. Like, why are you getting upset? So what? So you have one light month you could use. Go, no, I can't have a light one. I could become irrelevant. So it's
What
like
if one turns into 2 and 2
yeah,
turns into
I've
6?
never been able to grasp that. I said, I'm going to go out on my last client. That's the end of me. I'll be going to heaven at that point because like when I had my children, my husband has a picture of me on the phone in the hospital after I gave birth to my second child because someone had a meeting And I didn't know I was delivering that day because I didn't expect it. And they said, someone's calling. I said, give it to me. I'll talk to them. And when I hung up, he goes, do you even know you delivered the baby? I said, no, I'll tell them.
Those are the parts of entrepreneurship that don't get talked about very often.
You're always on. When someone calls, you have to be. So in our business, coaching, every vacation, I can't really take off. I have to be reachable because if they're having a crisis, that's what I'm there for. And I have been on many vacations where I had to take phone calls.
Yeah.
Many.
Yeah.
Where I had a rule in my family, don't check email for 2 days. At least give yourself 2 days. Where I wouldn't even look at email for 2 days. That was my compromise with the family. Because the minute you look at email stuff, then it could rub you the wrong way or piss you off.
Exactly.
But you're always on in this coaching world because your clients need you. Now, you'll know the ones that, scream fire and it's not a fire. But if they're really having a fire, they should call me. I don't want to have to put out the massacre. I'd rather put out the little fire.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that being said, what would you say is a target? Do you have a target that you're aiming at in the next 6 to 12 months? Is there a goal that you're working towards other than just, as much as you can?
1, stay employed because I love what I do. 2, make sure that each quarter I'm bringing on a new client because I have residuals. So my clients are usually 6 months to a year. So I do have a balance, but I'd like to bring on a new one every quarter, which isn't always easy because it takes a while to close. I try to have between 10 and 15 clients per month. They range from a one-on-one coaching to team. 15 is like my best ever. 10's a sweet spot. I like 10.
Yeah.
But I always feel good about myself when it's a 12-month. 15 is like extreme. When it's like 6 or 7, I'm like suffocated. Oh my God, what can I do next? So I try to stay in my sweet spot range. And I try to have a new idea, to try to do something differently with teams. And I try to come up with either it's a new exercise, a new focus area. This one, I'm actually targeting a different audience. I like to keep my innovations going because I know a lot. I actually met so many people. I've learned from so many people. There's so much I know up here. I got to make sure I'm getting it out there. And so I try to do it through a program or a message or my LinkedIn posts, try to have something provocative but interesting, but not fluffy. I hate being fluffy. I like to be very pointed, but I always want to put it out there so I don't forget. Because you know what? After a while, we start seeing the same stuff. You don't realize how that is so important to somebody, but I've been there already, right? So it's not as important to me in my moment. So I always try to make sure every quarter I have a new, like, where are we going? What's the message now?
I love that. Well, we're coming up on time, Tish. This has been a fantastic conversation. I've enjoyed talking to you so much. And there are a ton of lessons in here for anybody, both aspiring entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs alike. Before we wrap up, though, just one final question. If you had a magic wand in your hand right now and you could solve one problem for yourself and your business, what would it be?
Probably having more clients. Just easier. I can go find them, but I'd like to find an easier way where people calling me instead of me having to put yourself out there, because then that means everybody's working on themselves. Because there's a lot of us out there. Plenty of work for all. But if you talk to people, they realize the hardest part of this job is selling. And if there was a way that our value add gets so ingrained in everyone's business, there'll be enough work for all of them. So that's what I'd like. I'd like companies to start focusing on people development, investing in people, where we don't have to raise it for them or they have a problem. They should just proactively be doing it.
Right. I love that. Well, thank you so much again, Tish. This has been an excellent conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on.
I loved it, Rory. Thank you. I hope what we talked about resonates with at least one person, that they do something different.
Absolutely. We can help at least one person. That's great. Well, thanks again.
Take care. All right. Bye-bye.
Back to another episode of Untrapped, where we talk to business leaders about building a life beyond business. Today's speaker is a master at helping leaders and organizations clear out what she calls head trash, which are those emotional barriers that keep us from truly succeeding. Tish Squillaro isn't just another consultant. She's a self-made entrepreneur who funded her own education, even high school, and built her first business right out of college, a doggy daycare that she went on and ran for 13 years before pivoting into leadership strategy. Her journey is so fascinating. She founded Candor Consulting in 2007, and since then, she's become something of a secret weapon for companies like AT&T, Salesforce, and even IBM. But her work isn't just about traditional consulting. It's about understanding the emotional intelligence that makes or breaks leadership. She's written a book called Head Trash, or a series of books, that breaks down the 7 emotional patterns that derail even the most talented professionals. Things like fear, arrogance, and insecurity, basically all the stuff that we all struggle with in leadership and entrepreneurship, but we very rarely talk to each other about. Tish doesn't just diagnose problems. She prides herself on becoming an extension of the team and helping organizations navigate complex leadership transitions with a level of insight that's very rare in today's consulting world. Smart CEOs, Bravo Award winner, executive coach, and someone who truly understands that success is as much about the emotional game as it is about strategy.